I'd like to welcome you all to the March 4th Calaveras Council of Governments meeting. If you'd stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome Supervisor Kearney. Thank you. Who's first board meeting here, and also Kate Allen, our public member. The first order is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial and will be acted upon by the council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or interested parties may request that an item may be removed from the consent agenda for further discussion. I understand that we already have corrections to the regular meeting minutes, so item 1 will be pulled. Are there other items? Jim?
I'd like to discuss number 4, please.
Are there any other items to be pulled? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve items 2, 3, and 5A and 5B?
I will move that we approve those items.
Councilmember Cohen moves.
I'll second.
Councilmember Ponte seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Carly, do you want to address the correction of the regular meeting minutes?
Yes, I made a mistake on leaving Edson's name on that he had voted and he didn't, and so I had changed it, so the one that you signed tonight is accurate.
Are there any further comments on the meeting minutes as amended? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes as amended?
So moved.
Councilmember Morris approved. Second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Combs second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved 7-0. Councilmember Heminger, you pulled item number 4.
Right. This is a 15,000 plus contract with Apex, and it was funded with the OWP, where we set aside money for local funding for self-sufficiency. And we've talked that a lot about becoming a self-help county. I was disappointed to some extent in the scope of services we're getting. It involves a review, discussion, presentation, and I didn't think it really moved us forward with what we're trying to do with the discussion. It includes a presentation about funding the difficulties, which I think most of us are pretty much aware of. It could be helpful, but I'm not sure it really moves forward our discussion with being a self-help county. There's just not a lot of meat on the bones. I talked a little bit with Melissa, and one thing I might suggest for board consideration, instead of a presentation by this woman who is quite an expert and I think quite well respected, instead of her presentation to the COG, potentially make it a presentation to a joint study session with the full City of Angels and the full Board of Supervisors. Because we kind of go in circles with the COG here, waiting for direction, if you will, from the board. And if this expert was, and frankly, a lot of, I think some of the other supervisors are less familiar with the funding constraints than we are. So I think it would be beneficial if we could modify the scope, and if the board and the city were willing to have this expert give the presentation at a joint study session. And then hopefully that could lead to us getting some direction from the governing bodies about how to proceed or not to proceed with self-help county. So that would be, I guess, my suggestion to modify the scope. Melissa probably could say it better. But
Absolutely. I definitely would support the recommendation by Councilman Heminger to take this item for discussion with the Technical Advisory Committee for refinement of the scope. I think I would like to include the Technical Advisory Committee because that includes city and county staff to make sure that they're comfortable moving forward with this item with both of their governing boards. And I think that once we coordinate that, it can be implemented into the scope of work. And I think from my perspective, this is just really an opportunity to open the door on this discussion item. We haven't planned beyond this investment to fund a major initiative in the county. It's really just an opportunity, I think, for us to talk about what are the constraints and what is the future of transportation funding, what are the existing needs within the city and county, and then how do we plan for those. I think the initial effort and the Funding 101 presentation, which could go before a joint study session if supported by the city and county, would be a $15,000 effort. And that seems to be the cost and the scope of work that's been conducted by Humboldt and Lake County and other rural counties who have considered such an initiative. I don't think that if there was further direction to move forward that we as a county would be prepared for 2016, but I think it is an opportunity for both city and county staff to educate elected officials as they bring forward budget constraints and concerns about funding investments in our county. I think this will provide a platform for those discussions. If there is direction out of this meeting, that's where we look at the additional $5,000 that I think we could work on the development of a work plan. What would be the steps necessary that the local jurisdictions would need to take to consider such an initiative? So I would support having the discussion as Councilman Heminger outlined with the technical advisory, refine the scope accordingly, if that's the direction of the full board.
I would agree. I guess when I read this agreement, I read the word board, I assumed Board of Supervisors, so I would agree with what Jim is saying to be more inclusive with the City of Angels and the Board of Supervisors with COG's involvement as well.
Sure. I would echo that.
In agreement with that, too.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing that we should table this motion for this evening, send it back to the Technical Advisory Committee for further refinement of the scope of work.
I would-
Discussion with Ms. Bailey.
I would recommend approval of this item with the direction to modify the scope of work for inclusion of the Technical Advisory Committee and consideration of the alternative boards. I think we could move forward with that discussion and incorporate it. Obviously, I need to be respectful to the agendas of the Board of Supervisors and the City Council and their priorities. But if they're welcoming of that, I think we can approve it and move forward.
Jim, does that meet with where you were directed?
Very much so.
Okay.
Would there be any need to run that change by the bidder, Apex Strategy?
I think from her perspective, if whether the meeting is here or the meeting is at a shared location with multiple agencies, it shouldn't affect the cost or the scope. It will just be the one
Right.
meeting.
And the
Yeah.
content of the presentation will remain unchanged.
Absolutely.
This isn't binding you to a contract in any way. It's just approving her going ahead with the contract discussions. It's not a contract.
Okay. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the Humboldt County partnering with us on this?
So Lake County has completed this effort, and Humboldt County has begun discussions, and they are looking for an opportunity to maybe expand beyond this. I believe that this is in their existing scope of work. I think that they want to get more serious about a potential sales tax initiative in their county. They had some safety initiatives that have successfully passed. And so I think that they're looking for opportunity with Apex, and if there's an opportunity for cost sharing. So if she's able to provide the same services, if we could have a shared contract for those services. And so I'm interested in exploring that if there is opportunity. And I think if there is direction to explore this further, at what point can we reach out to our other fellow partners, whether it's Amador, Tuolumne, Humboldt, and see if they have a shared interest. At the same time, I want to be respectful to our transportation infrastructure needs. I think the past planning efforts of the County Public Works Department, and I think the local unique circumstances. But I just am always kind of celebrating that opportunity to work with other counties and save cost if possible.
Okay. So do we have a motion to direct Melissa to update the contract negotiations with Apex Strategies to move forward with this project here?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Councilmember Heminger, seconded by Councilmember Pawnee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Board 7-0. Public comment. 5 minutes per person. Comments shall be limited to items of interest to the public that are within the subject matter of the council. Government Code 54954.3. Is there any public comment this evening? Seeing none. Item. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hello, Justin Catalano. I just wanted to comment on last month's Calaveras Transit Maintenance and Organizational Analysis Working Paper, the Short-Range Transit Plan.
Is this a future agenda item that we're going to be adjusting tonight, or is this a non-agendized item?
It's non-agenda.
Okay.
This was something that we discussed last meeting, but I think they wanted a little more information concerning, like, a decision to be made on that. So, basically, I think is the transit organization that we have right now, is that a nonprofit, or are they making revenue from the fares that they collect?
The transit that we have now is managed by Calaveras County Public Works. Directed for operations is subcontracted out to the Transit Authority. The maintenance is handled by the county, and the capital improvement projects are managed by the Department of Public Works.
Okay. So basically, they were looking to bring the cost, the vehicle per hour down. Some things I wanted to ask, if we looked into alternative fuels such as biodiesel, would we get federal funding for that to offset the costs of that? And then I think that we were discussing something with if you were going to outsource this project or if you were going to keep it in-house. And basically, I feel that it should be kept in-house due to the fact that it adds to the community, from jobs, commitment to success for the organization. And basically, you'd have to hire the transit director, and they would oversee things, and then separate it from operations and then maintenance. To basically be more specific on getting the vehicle cost per hour down.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any other public comment? Okay. We have a presentation by Richardson and Company with a request for acceptance by the council for the fiscal year 2013-14 Annual Transportation Development Act, TDA financial audits. There are 4 audits to be presented. Let's start with audit number A, Calaveras Council of Governments Annual TDA financial audit.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Brian Nash. He is with Richardson and Company. This is the 3rd year he's conducted our annual TDA.
Good evening. So I'm Brian Nash from Richardson and Company. As you mentioned, there's 4 audits that we completed. The first 2 audits were small non-transit fund audits, one for the city of Angels, the other for the county, and those were very simple, just expense audits. We just audited the expenses to make sure they're spent appropriately. There was really nothing to report on those 2. So the bulk of the comments will be directed towards the transit fund and the COG audits. And I just want to briefly mention why we're here in March presenting June numbers. We had a plan to present the audits in November, December, I forget which it was, and it depended on starting the audit in October, but the general ledger wasn't closed in time for us to start the audit at that time, and we have government audits lined up one after the other. If somebody misses their slot, they go to the end of the line, so that's kind of what happened. The general ledger wasn't closed in time. So as far as responsibilities for the audit, the management is responsible for the financial statements, and the auditor is responsible for providing an opinion based on their audit. We had clean opinions in all 4 of our audits. As far as management letters go, where we present findings, issues that, recommendations for improvement, on the COG, there was a management letter, and it's a lower level comment. There's 3 levels of issues to report: material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, and other comments. And this is in the other comments area, so it's kind of a low level comment, but there were a lot of reclassifications that we had to post to finish the audit and report the numbers in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And so that's what our comment was related to. We discussed with staff how they could maybe improve the general ledger to make it more consistent with how the numbers are reported in the financial statements. It would really help speed up the audit. There was no management letter for the transit fund or the other non-transit funds. As far as discussion of the financial statements, there was a significant increase in grant revenues for the COG, so I'm going to start on the COG. The Wagon Trail and Arnold Rim projects had a significant amount of grant revenue, and because of that grant revenue, federal grant revenue, we had to do what's called a single audit. The single audit's done when there's federal revenue, and you have to test compliance with a whole bunch of compliance requirements. And so that's the first time we've had to do a single audit here with the COG. And there was, we tested the expenses. Most of the expenses that we tested related to the major program. The major program is a larger program under the different types of federal grants. Were related to these 2 projects, the Wagon Trail and Arnold Rim. And the county was the one who was the subrecipient that spent the money, and we found that the money was all spent appropriately. The only comment we have in the compliance report and the financial statements is related to when a subrecipient receives money from a governmental agency that has responsibility for a grant, they're supposed to include that money on the schedule of federal awards that they use for their own single audit. And so the county has a schedule of expenditures of federal awards, a CFA, and they're supposed to include that grant on their CFA and include it in the single audit, and it was omitted from their single audit. But it turns out it was below the threshold that would have been tested, so it really didn't turn out to be a significant issue, but that was a finding that we have for the single audit in the compliance report for the COG. We have another compliance issue in the report. Some of these grants that were obtained way in the past, and the previous staff didn't keep what's called the CFDA number, the Catalog of Federal Domestic Assistance number. It's the number that's needed by auditors to know what to audit when they're doing a single audit. The previous staff didn't keep the documentation that showed the CFDA number that was involved in some of these federal grants. And so that's a real big issue for an auditor, because that really tells us what we need to do when we're doing our single audit. So we have that as an issue. It's the programs that was related to, that comment was related to, was a small program, so it didn't turn out to be a big deal. But keeping documentation for federal awards is very important. So an agency that's responsible for federal awards really needs to focus on keeping that documentation and making sure that the auditor has an audit trail. So those are the 2 findings we had in the COGS audit. And then as far as, these are old numbers, June 30, but unrestricted fund balance in the general fund of the COG increased from $428,000 to $587,000, and the trust funds that are used for the LTF, STA, and RSTP money, the different types of special monies that the COG manages, went from $687,000 to $913,000. So there's quite a bit more money at June 30, 14 available to appropriate and spend than there was the previous year. Now I'll switch to the County Transit Fund. There was very few changes reported in the County Transit Fund's audit. The numbers are really consistent with the previous year, and it basically broke even. In the compliance report, there's a couple of issues reported. One of them was some of the grants didn't get accrued on time. We had to post some adjustments to accrue grant revenue. So cutoff of grant revenue is one of the issues we reported in the compliance report. And then the other was related to the fair revenue ratio, which I'm sure all of you are well aware of. They didn't meet the 10% minimum requirement. It was 9.38%. So it would have taken probably another $9,000 or $10,000 of revenue to meet the fair revenue ratio requirement. So, obviously I know everyone's working on a plan to meet that minimum fair revenue ratio requirement, but that was our recommendation. One other issue that we have in the transit funds compliance report is related to not filing the state controller's report timely. I think it was about maybe a month late. As far as accounting policies, there were no accounting policies that were implemented this year, no new ones. There will be a accounting policy that needs to be implemented at June 30, 2015 related to pension liabilities. GASB statement number 68 has to be implemented at June 30, 15. And as a result of that, there's a liability with PERS that the COG will have to report on its balance sheet. The estimate that PERS gave COG was only about $50,000, so it's not a huge number, although the COG's kind of small. And that liability is not something that affects the fund that's budgeted. The general fund of the COG is budgeted, and so this recording the liability it's recorded on the government-wide statements, the full accrual statements. It doesn't affect the general fund that gets budgeted. But that's something that'll be new, and there'll be new disclosures for that next year. Other required disclosures that we have, estimates. Some of the estimates that are in the financial statements are the fair value of the cash and investments pool with the county. Some of the cost reimbursement grant receivables are based on the estimate of the qualifying expenses that were incurred. Compensated absences, which is the vacation and sick leave liability, is an estimate. Pension contributions are estimated by CalPERS, and lives for the assets depreciation. As far as other items, the scope of the audit was consistent with the engagement letter, although we did have a single audit this year, which was new. No difficulties encountered in dealing with management or disagreements with management. No issues discussed prior to our retention, and no consultations occurred with other auditors that we're aware of. And with that, I'm done unless anybody has some questions.
The only question I had, I read all of the responses from staff, and it just seemed like everybody was on board to make note and do things. I was just curious about what the problem was with closing the general ledger, if there was an issue getting the general ledger closed.
So the COG has contracted financial services through the county, and the county auditor has to wait for the input of 30 different departments before she can close. So it's sometimes,
You just have to wait.
It just takes longer.
And we had our kickoff meeting, and when you're scheduling, 3 months in advance, when you think you're going to close the books officially, we tried to hit it as close as we could. But as Brian said, they're, stacking up clients every week. So once we miss that window, then he's got to reshuffle and get us somewhere.
There just wasn't enough time in our schedule to move them back, because everybody needs their audit. All governments that we audit need their audits done in October, November, and December. So they had to go kind of to the back of the line, unfortunately. It's really difficult to close the books for a county. I don't envy the county auditor to have to do that. It's really complicated. So, we had a date that the county auditor thought that the books would be closed, and we pushed it out one extra week to be sure, but it was still not quite enough time. It's just a really complicated thing to close the books and prepare for an audit.
And then this goes also in front of the Board of Supervisors, or?
I will be submitting all of the PDF copies to the county auditor and to the CAO, Shirley Ryan. So as soon as the Council of Governments accepts these audits as presented, then I will then forward all of these audits to the county, the city, to Caltrans, and the state controller's office.
And then they see the cash basis versus accrual basis, all those corrections and are gone over with the county auditor.
The county auditor received
The
these
same
items
thing.
ahead of time. She knows all of the breakdown of adjustments, so she knows it. And then anything that she needs to roll to make the beginning balance for next year, she will have to post those entries. Does anyone have any other questions?
Any public comment? So this is a action is rested as acceptance of these four
So staff
audits.
recommends the acceptance of fiscal year 13-14 annual transportation development act financial audits for the Calaveras Council of Governments and also for Calaveras County Public Works as the transit operator.
We have a motion to accept the audits as presented.
Did we have public comment?
I'm sorry?
Did we have public comment?
I asked for public
Oh,
comment.
okay, I'm
and
sorry.
I didn't see anyone. Okay. Any further comment from the board?
No.
Do we have a motion to accept the audits as presented?
I will make that motion.
Motion by Councilmember Cone,
A second.
second by Councilmember Morris. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved 7-0. Thank you. Mr. Raggio, you're on the hot seat again. We have a minute order approving an amendment to the Policies and Procedures Manual requiring the completion of a comp and classification study, changing the cycle from 3 years to a 5-year review and update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff is recommending that council approve an amendment to the COG Policies and Procedures Manual, Section 1, page 9, requiring the completion of a classification and compensation study from triennially to a 5-year review and update. I have attached a copy of the page from the procedures manual with strikeout in red, but I would like to correct the minute order to read, a motion was made to amend the Calaveras Council of Governments Policies and Procedures Manual to review and consider update of a classification and compensation study on a 5-year basis to be more consistent with what I had printed in my sample policy and procedures manual. If any of the council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I was just a little bit confused by the red line additions and strikeouts. And it starts with the strikeout of conducted triannually, that's fine. And then it inserts reviewed. Reviewed by whom? Reviewed by staff?
The executive management group, so that would be the county CAO, the city manager, the chair and vice chair of the COG. So at the time of 5 years, we would put that on the agenda. We would meet with the executive management group, see if they had any recommendations, and move forward from
Okay.
there.
Should that be further defined as to who
You
the
want me to-
reviewing body is?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay. And then, given that, then if you go over to the next page, then it says the study will be conducted by, on the previous page, you're talking about reviewing the issue to ensure appropriate staffing levels, positions, and compensation. Then it launches into the study will be conducted. Seems like there's a missing piece in between the point where it's going to be reviewed and conducted.
Well, we
Seems
would-
like it should be another sentence. Should the executive management group feel, or should the COG body feel a review is warranted, then the study will be conducted.
Yeah.
Just
So
seems like
staff
something.
had a 5-year Mark would bring forward this item again to the council, then they would direct that we start working through the executive management group to hire a consultant to conduct it. And then you have target meetings. I think we met 3 times on the last classification and compensation study, but I can revise that if you would like.
Well, I don't know, maybe I'm just being overly anal about it, but it just seemed like there was a missing piece in the story of how events would
So the project
progress.
would be presented to the council and brought up in the way of the overall work program. So it would be discussed before we even went out and hired a consultant. You know, we could advise that we meet with the executive management group to start that process. It's totally up to the council if you'd like me to revise that.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think the suggestion by Wes, actually I support it, just makes a lot more sense. That what's here was fine the way it was previously, but now we're interjecting the review.
Okay.
And I like Wes's suggestion that if the review determines that the study is required, then such study shall be done. So I would support that change.
Okay.
Is there, okay, now I'm confused. Is there a study first, or it's
No.
reviewed and then they decide there's going to be a study?
Just
Okay.
the item is reviewed.
By
Staff
the
would bring
EMG
forward
first.
To see if they felt the need to do the classification and compensation study. Then we would start the process then to meet with the executive management group.
Okay.
Then we would start, you know, it would be in the overall work program. It would have a scope of work. We would go out and release an RFP. We would solicit consultants. And then as we started the project, we would check in with the executive management group over the life of the project and then bring the total result back to the council.
Okay. And I assume it just seems too cumbersome to do every 3 years, and that's why you want to
It's
do it
a
every 5?
lot
Yeah.
of work.
Okay.
It is a lot of work. I think the last one took 20 months. We then came back to the ad hoc. We had ad hoc committee, met a couple times, and then brought the complete plan back to the council.
I remember on last month's agenda, it was just presented for discussion with no recommendation.
So now I'm
My
following
feelings
up.
at that time, that 3 years was too frequent. We just finished one. And I'm pleased that you actually placed a recommendation in there as well. And I agree with the recommendation.
Okay. So
Councilman,
just make a revision on
well,
the second.
let's finish the board comment. Councilman Henninger?
It confused me just a little bit, maybe I misunderstood, but it's not staff, it's the executive management group that is going to do the review, and the executive management group is the one who determines whether or not to conduct a study.
Okay, so
Is
staff.
that correct?
Well, staff will hit the 5-year mark, and it's our responsibility to bring the item because it's due. So we want to be compliant with our policies and procedures. Staff would bring the item to the council for inclusion in that fiscal year's overall work program. At that time, the council would vote on it. That would trigger us to start meeting with the executive management group. We would let them know we're going out for an RFP. You know, we have a budget, we have a scope of work. And then as we're hitting those target meetings during the classification and compensation, we'd be checking in with the executive management group and then bringing back any reports back to the full council.
So
When
if I
it
might
first-
maybe just
Didn't answer the
interject.
question.
Oh, I didn't?
No, just a second.
Yeah, when it first begins, it comes to the council
Yeah,
first.
from staff.
And if the council denies having a compensation, then we don't start anything,
No,
is what I'm understanding.
exactly.
So
This is at the total discretion of the council.
Yeah, and the only thing is that we have in the joint powers agreement, the function of the executive management group. And so the executive management group is advisory to the full council on anything personnel, is salary compensation related. So if I might propose possibly the rewriting of this policy to say a focused staff classification, compensation, and utilization study of COG staff will be reviewed by the executive management group and Calaveras Council of Governments every 5 years to ensure appropriate staffing levels, positions, and compensation. Should the study be warranted, it will be conducted by an outside entity and will be reviewed by the executive management group and COG board. Just by the way the JPA is written, for the council's information, we are required to bring that information twice. So we bring it first to the executive management group, then to the full board with their recommendation.
Any other comment?
I like that language.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
what I will modify that. Do you want me to bring back the policy again with the modification? Or do you
I think
want
we
me to-
should,
Okay,
but I want to add one more thing.
okay,
This goes to the technical staff as 1.02, the ASO, the 1.03 is the transportation manager, 1.04 is the administrative assistant. This language is actually under the administrative assistant heading because there's a 1.05 that says other personnel. I think this should have its own heading of,
oh,
its own
item?
subsection,
Okay.
right? Otherwise, someone could look at this also and say, well, this only applies to the administrative assistant. And Carla gets all kinds of special attention then.
Okay, I'll bring
Agreed.
that back.
Okay. So we're going to table this motion, subject to further revision, and bring it back at the next board meeting.
Very good.
Next item, item number 9, a minute order approving the fiscal year 2015-2016 draft operation budget. Recommendation to be presented by Melissa Reggio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff recommends the council approve the fiscal year 2015-16 draft operations budget. The executive management group has reviewed and supports the recommendation to the full council. The 15-16 draft budget totals $512,562. It has a small increase of $817 over the 14-15 budget. You can see these changes in the salary and benefits portion of attachment 1. The changes are identified over in the change column. So I've identified on the first line item 5001 salary and wages. This line item increased. This was due to the non-represented employees' annual merit increases. Line item 5055, this is health insurance and cash in lieu. It decreased by $2,700. But the big decrease came this year from PERS and our actuarial rate from the employer's portion. This was due to CalPERS having to conduct a analysis of risk pools. So agencies that are in risk pooling, they had to do an actual liability assessment. So in doing that, our assessment, because it's based on your individual employees, dropped from 12% down to 8.9%. So that was where our big decrease was. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions by board members?
I just have one. Under line item deferred compensation,
Yes.
I see that's being proposed at the previous year's level. Is that driven by bargaining unit agreements?
Yes, the negotiated items that the ad hoc committee negotiated with non-represented employees.
Okay.
So that currently is at a fixed rate
Okay, and that contract runs through?
until we change it. So in
5 years.
Well, I mean, it'll be renegotiated or reopened, or would be in when?
When we do a classification and compensation study.
Okay, all right.
Councilmember Heminger.
Maybe tricky, these percentages in the notes column,
Uh-huh.
I guess that's the percentage change, but I don't think the arithmetic works.
Oh, okay. I'll have to
I think
change
it may be
it.
0.4% instead of 4%.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll look at that. All right.
Are there any other questions by the board? Do we have any public comment? I had one question myself. Item number 5257, the office expense for small equipment, the filing cabinet. We need that to stay the same,
What number, 52 what?
5257?
Okay, no, that's not correct. But that is the same one from last year, we're not getting a new file cabinet, I'll look at that.
Okay.
That is
I
for,
apologize.
we just got a, what is the video camera, Carly?
I'm sorry?
For the tax.
We just got a video camera
Yeah.
for our TAC, to record our TAC meetings. It's for a camera, small items like that.
The office expense, small equipment,
Yeah.
okay.
I'll-
So the filing cabinet is just an example of what it could be, but not necessarily.
That's
what
my
you're-
last year's.
Okay, last year's example,
Yeah.
okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. So it doesn't change the amount, it just changes the
Yes.
example. All right. Any further comment by the board?
What's
that?
When I said that, I was thinking someone might need it in their office, but that makes sense.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the fiscal year 2015-2016 draft operations budget?
So
Moved by Councilmember Morris.
Councilmember. You did?
I heard a tie and ladies get the tie, so. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Seconded by Councilmember Heminger. All those in favor?
Aye.
So move 7-0. Item number 10, approval of the fiscal year 2015-2016 draft overall work program. Melissa Raggio.
Mr. Chair. Staff recommends the council approve the fiscal year 2015-16 draft overall work program and planning, programming, and monitoring expenditure plan. The fiscal year 2015-16 draft overall work program reflects a one-year scope of work. The draft is very close to our last year's 14-15 overall work program. The only addition is work element number 9, the regional transportation plan update. The draft will be refined 2 more times. So this draft is due to Caltrans by March 1st. We will then be bringing back the final draft to the council in June. And then we'll be bringing back amendment number 1 in October. And amendment number 1 is where all of the certified carryover and project balances will be identified. We have to wait for the county to close, and then we also receive a certification of expenditures from Caltrans, and then all of their final comments. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Council. Melissa, you stated this was due to Caltrans on March 1st. Are we
Yes,
are we
but I
late?
requested, they know our council meeting is the first
So they're
Wednesday,
okay.
so I asked ahead of
Okay.
time to see if I could turn it in.
Not seeing any comment. Is there any public comment on the draft overall work program? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the fiscal year 2015-16 draft overall work program and planning, programming, and monitoring expenditure plan? Moved by Kate Allen. Councilmember Allen. A second?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilmember Combs. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved 7-0. Okay. Agenda item number 11. Action requested is to approve. Staff recommends the council approve the fiscal year 2015-16 through 2018-19 programming of city and county projects as listed and approved by the Council of Governments at the regular February meeting. Melissa Eads.
Very good. Thank you. I ask that you support staff's recommendation as stated. As the Calaveras Council of Governments is aware, we've conducted a call for projects beginning in December 2014. We identified approximately $2.063 million over a 4-year period. I've also identified for our new council members the COG board's goals and objectives with a call for projects which initiated originally in 2011. I'd like to first start by thanking the city engineer for his refinement of the cost estimates. And with that, we've been able to identify a strategy, a programming strategy for the list of projects that the COG board approved in their February meeting. That list can be found on page 2 of the staff memo for your information. I'm recommending approval of the programming strategy as outlined in attachment number 1. That's where you see the approved list of projects. You see the fiscal years in which city and county anticipate allocating or obligating those funds. And you see the total amounts based upon the engineer's estimates that have been provided by the city and county. I just want to let the council know that it's my intention to get these projects programmed in the FSTIP, but I am aware that the city and county will not be obligating their current 14-15 CMAQ obligation, approximately $1 million between both the city and the county. The county has over $600,000 for the Government Center Drive, Mountain Ranch Road, and State Route 49 project, and the city has approximately $340,000 for the Murphy's Grade Road project. So I hope to have as many projects identified in a backup list for alternatives, but what we're looking for is either to lend our CMAQ funding that we have currently programmed in 14-15, possibly to SJCOG or another county who's ready to obligate this year. That information I won't have until probably April. And then if that's the case, it won't affect this program of projects. If that doesn't work out, then any scenario that I bring forward to the council in April or May will affect this program of projects. But it's the intention to protect the funding that both jurisdictions have in construction on those two identified projects, and then try to incorporate as equitably as possible the priority list that's been approved here. So with that, I would like to move forward in working with headquarters and the programming as identified in the minute order, knowing that it may be modified depending on the alternatives for the current year programming.
Council, do we have any comments?
We have faith in Melissa.
Is there any comments from the public? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the fiscal year 2015-16 through 2018-19 programming of city and county projects as listed and approved by the Council of Governments at the regular February meeting?
Make a motion.
Councilmember Pawnee moves.
Second.
Councilmember Morris seconds. No further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved 7-0. Item number 12. A minute order approving the appointment of the chair to the California Association of Councils of Governments. Melissa Eads.
All right, staff recommends the appointment of the chair to the California Association of Council of Governments. This is a body that we are a member and have been for many years, and Calaveras County has never had a representative on the California Association. I think we are just one of very few counties that is not currently represented. My recommendation is that the chair be appointed, so as chairmanship turns over, we would have new representation on this association, but I think it's critical participation so that the chair could be made aware and familiar with regional issues and the information that's coming at a state level in order to provide leadership to colleagues at the RTPA level. So that is the recommendation. The commitment is only one leadership forum that occurs in April of every year. Obviously, there could be participation in other meetings, but really that's the only commitment that we ask for from the delegate that would be appointed. So with that, I'd like to turn it over for any questions.
How come it wasn't done in the past?
No, I'm not sure.
And is the meeting in Sacramento or?
The meeting is historically always in Monterey. And I'm not sure why we've never appointed someone. I think that the opportunity to network with other COG directors is good. I think to network with other council people who represent our TPAs is a good opportunity. I think to hear what the statewide agenda is and how it impacts COGs is a good opportunity. So I would recommend the appointment of a delegate. I think the only budgetary impact is travel expenses. Those aren't currently budgeted, but would come over out of contingencies.
You're not paying them for a meeting for each day's there?
No.
Or the chair's there?
That's a great question.
See, I mean, it only seems fair to me.
So we do have a policy on our travel reimbursement, so we've identified that. We did modify the policy for the chair and the vice chair and attendance at executive management meetings because that's an additional required meeting. So I would have to check the language in the policy that we recently amended to see if it specifies required meetings, but that would something, I'd have to check that.
They do incur personal expenses, and it would be nice to at least give them something for going there.
At this point, is there further council comment on the action item itself?
How does the chair feel about?
I look forward to it. I think any opportunity to understand better the Council of Governments at a statewide level, both direction and networking with other council EDs and or board members. I looked at the list of some of the other EDs and I was pleased to see that the Santa Cruz COG is headed up by our former George Dondero, and I've known George for many years, so I look forward to touching base with him and seeing how he's doing. But I think as your chair, I think it would be very beneficial to go ahead and learn more from the statewide perspective what the state is trying to encourage the COGs to do, and I expect that that's what this conference would focus.
Good.
And I don't need a stipend to go. I'd be happy to take one, but that's not required for me, so thank you. Do we have a motion to designate the chair to represent the COG at the CaliCOG Council?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Kearney.
I'll second that.
Second by Councilmember Combs. Any further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved 7. Okay, going to the county report. We have agenda item 13A, and I think our county representative this evening is Mr. Beckinger.
Good afternoon. In the past, I've been reporting progress on the 1226 intersection project. During this last period, this last month, we entered into a contract to have the underground fuel storage tanks removed. We had knowledge that there were 3 underground storage tanks. When they opened up the ground and were in there working, they found a 4th one tucked away in there. So that was also removed. The project, instead of taking about 1 day, it took a couple days. A little bit of contaminated soil that was found there was also taken to the landfill for proper disposal. So that's moving along. This Friday, we'll be meeting with PG&E so that then they could come in and put in their utilities in the area, extend the utilities in the area where the tanks were situated. So they have to go in there and do that work. Once that's done, the next thing that's coming then, we have to receive the go-ahead from Caltrans with the E76. Once we get that, we'll be able to go and advertise for bids. So that's the progress there. Okay, any questions?
Did you also want to address item 13A, the agenda submittal for the Board of Supervisors?
Well, okay. Some time ago, the project in Arnold was completed. We processed the notice of completion through the Board of Supervisors. That's the legal requirement that we have when we issue a contract in order to close the contract. Now that that contract is complete and closed, this item has come before you for, you don't close it. It's just ratification of a document that's already been approved by the Board of Supervisors.
Melissa, if I might ask a question, Robert. Will local assistance require a contract amendment? Was there additional funds?
Tina Sock
Okay.
followed up with that answer and said that the change order that they brought before the board would be adequate. So we are not closing the contract. They've gotten certification that the project is complete, but their final invoice will come through COG, and I will reimburse them, and I will submit the whole closing construction package to Caltrans for approval and the last reimbursement on the project.
When I speak about the contract and the notice of completion, I'm speaking in regards to the contract that Public Works has with the contractor who actually built the project. There is still work to be done between Caltrans, the COG, and I'm assuming at this point that the county has completed what we needed to give to you, so that there's still a few things then.
Yeah, you're working on the whole construction package, and then you'll submit it to me.
Okay.
And then I'll reimburse you all. Forward on to Caltrans.
Right, so then that happens already outside of our construction contract work that we've completed.
Okay.
Well, it's a beautiful project.
Thank you.
It's nice to have a nice walking path and opportunities for the public to enjoy the great lands of Calaveras County and our forest.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. So we have a action item before us, a minute order. Actually, it's not a minute, it's just ratification of the County Board of Supervisors' action to accept the Arnold Rim Trail as complete and authorize the execution of the notice of completion. Do we have a motion to ratify the Board of Supervisors' action?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Councilmember Ponte.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Kearney. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Approved 7-0. We have the transit report. Verbal report, no supplemental materials included, and then we have a fiscal year 2014-15 second quarter report to take a look at.
Okay, but I'm going to start, if I may, with a little bus shelter update.
Sure.
I have, because Councilman Heminger likes visual aids, we have some.
I'll say, driving through San Andreas every day, it was nice to see the project move forward.
What this shows is, and if, I have some more if anybody, shows the 4 of the sites, this isn't all of it, but 4 of the sites that got bus stop improvements in the last couple weeks, showing kind of a picture of what it was starting and during and end point. Although it doesn't get to the very end because the curb striping went in today and the signs got moved. And it was quite a project because the sidewalk segments got totally replaced and to get to ADA compliance. So hopefully our passengers will be more comfortable. These are all existing stops on our current routes with just a little bit of change. In Murphy's, the stop that's now Tom Bell Road was in that shopping center, just in a little patch of dirt. So hopefully the people there will be more comfortable on the benches. And we made the sidewalk pad a little bit wider there to accommodate maybe a future shelter. So if the passengers come, if it shows that kind of use to warrant a shelter, that would be a future site that would be already simple to install the shelter.
Will a standard be placed with the baskets and the transit?
We are not installing trash receptacles, but there will have the shelter, the schedule holders, information about routes at the sites. The trash receptacles kind of present their own additional set of problems. We'll try to keep the bus stops picked up. But when you have the trash receptacles, people bring their household garbage.
Okay.
Okay. So moving on to the second quarter report. Going to be reworking this and coming back to a future meeting with revisions to both the first and second quarter reports to get more accurate division of when in time the expenditures and revenues get posted to the, so it might be in the form of a semi-annual report that comes out, or it might be a revision of those two quarterly reports. That said, we don't want to dwell too much. We did have a fare box recovery ratio of, the overall was 11.58, but there again, we're going to adjust and see where it actually is. So maybe it's extremely good news, but we're going to wait and see on that, if it's okay. But the items that we're working on page 6 of the report, by the time we come back in April or May, that might be a little stale, so I'm just going to go over that real quickly. That Gold Rush Days, we provided transportation for the festival in Angels Camp so they could close the road, close Main Street, and Calaveras Transit provided a shuttle to the event and around it. And the Angels Camp Business Association and the commemorative committee contributed $1,700 to have that service. So the events like this help us get to fare box.
That does come in as a fare.
It does,
revenue.
it is fair revenue, yeah. I think you heard a lot about Stuff the Bus. That was very successful this year. The 2015 disaster exercise is something that Calaveras Transit is participating in with many of the emergency responders, all kinds of social service agencies and religious groups, and it's going to be a simulated wildfire disaster in the Mokelumne River Canyon. It's going to affect both Calaveras and Amador, so it's a collaborative effort there. And Calaveras Transit and Amador Transit are going to be poised to help with evacuations and actually provide a little bit of transportation to the people that are participating in it so they can leave their cars in a parking lot. All right, let's see what's next on our...
Deborah, do you mind if I ask you a question about the...
Not at all.
Gold Rush Days? So for that donation, because I'm assuming it's open to the public, was on a fixed route, and then we'll add it to the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Would that then be identified as a local contribution instead of the fare revenue?
I'm not certain of that.
Okay.
You can ask.
And then I think too, Deborah, you mentioned maybe getting on a semi-annual reporting basis. And I think that might be one of the things that we look at with the short-range transit plan. And I know that Cliff Chambers, our consultant, was talking with Deborah about creating a tool for the Public Works Department to use internally to report the information so that we can get the accurate information in the quarterly reports, but I think also move away from doing them quarterly and more on a semi-annual basis that sort of provides the time for the accumulation of gathering that information and then the submittal of the report. So I think that that's something that we'll be working on together and then maybe bringing back as part of the short-range transit plan, or you might just be seeing the implementation of a modified tool that the Public Works Department begins to implement with a new semi-annual report. But I wanted to point out that Calaveras Transit does report quarterly to the Calaveras Council of Governments and has a history of reporting quarterly. So I think oftentimes what happens is as they're trying to get out the information that maybe that there are expenditures or revenues that haven't quite caught up with their need to report to us on a quarterly basis. So within our TDA guidebook, we don't have the expectation that they report to us more than semi-annually. So that might be beneficial to you, and it also might benefit Public Works staff.
And at the same time, we're going to be revisiting what the performance measures are, what provides a good tool for all of us to see what our progress is and what our status is. And that's going to be the topic of future conversations.
Can I ask a question about this report? Maybe about the fair revenue on table 1. You have the total fair revenue as increased in 14-15 as compared to 13-14, yet the total ridership decreased. So how did that work? Did the rates increase?
So
Or was it the events?
So my assumption would be, one, I'm wondering if there's some local contribution. It could be ticket or pass sales. So for example, the Calaveras Council of Governments agreed to buy passes for the jail. So then is that figured in, and you see a bump in fare revenues at the point at which the passes are sold. I think also what we've been seeing is this trend because the county implemented the zone system, which they historically had never had before. How far into that implementation are we of the zone fare system?
I believe that was in 2012.
Okay, so it has been, what was that?
2013.
2013. So I think what we're starting to see is maybe some increases in fare with the implementation of that, even though ridership is down.
Okay, yeah, because that's confusing.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, because then you recognize the cost per passenger is up. You know, all of the trends wouldn't necessarily support that. Yeah.
Right. My other question was Route 2, and I know there's been some talk in the past about some ideas to address this route, ideas about dial-a-ride and, you know, some other ways to service the area in a more economical way. Are you guys moving forward at all?
we are.
with
These are conversations that we're having with the short-range transit plan. And
You know, and I think
There are-
that that is something that we're going to be hopefully bringing to the Board of Supervisors, because as we're working on the short-range transit plan, we've come to the chapter and the need to identify goals, objectives, performance measures, because what we've said is how do we provide Public Works with the tools to really effectively monitor the system, so when things are going wrong, they'll know, and then they can quickly adapt within the year, so that we don't wait till the end of the year, and the only expectation at this point is fare box recovery ratio. So we're looking to then create tools that they can monitor and manage the system on an ongoing basis. But one of the things that we want to bring is the discussion of goals and objectives and the vision that the County Board of Supervisors has for the transit system. And why that's so important is because it directly affects service alternatives. And so if one of the things is, you know, operating a more cost-efficient and effective system, then can we have this geographic equity where we travel to all of these remote locations, or do we focus services on the main routes and find alternatives for other geographically isolated areas? So I think we're hoping to maybe have a study session or a special meeting with the Board of Supervisors in April to start talking with them about their goals and objectives and how it's going to influence service. And then I think at that point, we can look at alternatives, we can look at partnerships, we can look at different social service providers and transportation that's being provided in that area, and how do we enhance it. So we hope that addresses routes like the Route 2, and I think that Copperopolis is another poorly performing route as well.
Question.
Sure.
Doesn't Route 2 already use alternate vehicles, smaller type vehicles?
no, but that is in the plan. We were going to get vans.
One of the options.
To reduce the operating costs of the large buses.
When is the short-term transit plan finished up?
Well, we are very behind on the short-range transit plan. I think we've been working on it for going on 2 years now. When did we start it? Last year? I believe. January, so not quite. We're just crossing 2 fiscal years. We hope to have it complete by the end of this fiscal year. That being said, we have new Public Works leadership. I think we have new Board of Supervisors leadership. I think that there's an interest of the COG board to look objectively at the transit system, and I feel the same sentiment from the City of Angels. So we're looking at changing that scope to potentially afford more time for joint meetings with the Board of Supervisors and the City Council so that they could shape the next 3 to 5 years in a way that perhaps we haven't involved them in previous updates. So while I'd like to say June 30th, I think I'm open to pushing that date and affording this time for that level of collaboration. And then also, I think, wanting to get the support and buy-in of a new public works director as well.
And, I mean, are we waiting for that short-range transit plan to talk about ideas to address some of these things? Or-
No, it's part of the process to get to the short-range transit plan. Yeah.
So when we identify the goals and objectives and the performance measures, those will be directly related to the service alternatives. So for example, if the Board of Supervisors really does want to provide service to geographically isolated areas, maybe it's not 5 days a week, one trip up and one trip down. Maybe it's consistent 2 times a week, where it's easily accessible for people to get up and down, but not have 5-day-a-week service. So I think those are the conversations that we're looking to have with the supervisors in their communities. And then I think also their feedback is going to shape the alternatives. So while that may work for people in Mountain Ranch who want to get to a doctor's appointment and can't stand those 3 to 5 hour wait times, it may not work for kids who need a 5-day-a-week service. So what we're going to have to discuss with them is the trade-offs and the alternatives, and really what their goals are for the system. And we're open to the idea that the system may cost more if we're implementing the supervisor's vision in providing a service alternative that benefits their communities. So I think we should wait for the Board of Supervisors to weigh in, but in terms of the overall monitoring and recommendations for improved efficiency, fare box recovery, I think we've been reacting, the COG board has been reacting to that need all year. And for example, we've provided a contractor, a consultant to work with the county in the negotiations of the contract with paratransit. We've provided that organizational and maintenance analysis. We're providing assistance in the acquisition of bus purchases. So we're doing things right now that will set them up for improved efficiency. But I really think that it takes a more in-depth conversation with the board to get to those service alternatives.
But I know that they have made changes to Route 2, particularly, I'm focusing on that because that's our worst performing route, but I know they have made changes to Route 2 service-wise in the past. They've reduced service based on the fact that, they didn't feel like there was getting enough ridership. So, but nothing that I know has been done since then. But you're saying they can't really do anything until we have more planning?
Yeah. So I think too, all of the service alternatives will also be linked to a financial strategy. So what we're doing right now with the county is reviewing funding scenarios. So for example, they may decide we need to increase more service to that area so it provides greater opportunity for people to ride. That might be their preferred service alternative, but does it fit within the funding envelope that we have? And then how does that affect other runs? So I think that they're all interconnected, but our end goal is providing the service better, more efficiently, and then just wanting to verify that vision with the County Board of Supervisors. With any service changes, however, those have to be approved by the Board of Supervisors anyway with a public hearing. So even if they wanted
to change the route schedule?
I believe so. A public hearing is required to change the route schedule.
Like when they took out the afternoon route on Route 2, was that had to be approved?
That
by the
was
board?
a public hearing process, yeah.
That was approved by the board?
It was part of a larger discussion of making cuts to try to improve to reduce the operating costs. But what it did was it kind of
Reduced ridership?
cut our feet, yeah.
Okay,
Because
well, obviously, I'm impatient. I've been looking at that poor Route 2 quarter after quarter after quarter and going, yeah, and what can we do? So I'm excited to hear about what the changes may be in the future to help that struggling little route. And can I just make one more comment back to the bus shelters before we move on in the agenda? I'm so excited about the bus shelters. I think they look great in San Andreas. I think it's like one of the, besides the litter removal that we did, it's probably the newest uplift to the street as you go by. I think it looks good. But if my memory serves me right, is March 15th our deadline in terms of having the...
March 31st.
It's 31st.
For the Callaway, yes, we have till June, but we're going to make it.
Well, okay,
That's the deadline for construction.
I wasn't sure if it had to be invoiced or paid or how that worked, but I know we're so close, but I just
The
wanted to
work
make
that's
sure we're not
being
gonna miss
invoiced
it.
has to be done, yeah. And so we're currently, over the next week, constructing one in the parking lot of La Quintana Plaza, at Vista Del Lago and State Route 26. And that'll,
Then we'll be ready to invoice and...
yeah, we're moving the invoices through. I got progress payments due to George Reed and our young doll that does the materials testing.
Well, I'm very pleased that it's been pushed through to the last minute. You guys are doing awesome, so I hope it goes all the way and without a hitch. Good job, good job.
I have a question. Are the operating expenditures reflective of maintenance on the vehicles?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And is all the maintenance done in the county?
Well, as much as we can. There are times when something has to be transported to a specialty, to Stockton or someplace. But to the greatest extent, county shop does that.
Thank you.
At this time.
Thanks.
Councilmember Flynn?
Deborah, who, you mentioned earlier, kind of flagged my attention, how does it determine who gets a shelter at the stops? Or how, is there a criteria that?
There is a criteria, and that could be part of the discussion moving forward for performance. And I think it's 10 passengers was the threshold.
Okay.
In a day. And these locations were set some years ago, so I really couldn't give too much information about that. We did, make some adjustments along the way. The Tom Bell location was originally going to be going to be on State Route 4, and we got out there for the pre-construction meeting with Caltrans permit people and their electrical people, and there's a signal there, and underground was a jungle of utilities, and plus there was a hill that traffic wouldn't be able to see the bus stop there. So we moved it around the corner. The adjacent property owner was thrilled, the owner of the car wash there. They're happy to have it. They'd like it to be a shelter.
Yeah,
And that's why we took a little bit extra space, yeah.
It'd be nice to see that they're all sheltered, because
Well,
when I
there's
see it...
that, we might do a little outreach to that little subdivision mobile home park at the end of the street there and see if we can entice some people to use transit.
Yeah.
We built it and they will
Yeah, I
come.
think it's a good location for
I think
that.
there's a little, I spoke to the manager of that subdivision. She goes, no, the people here don't need any rides. They have family to come pick them up. And I'm thinking, well, maybe not all of them all the time, or maybe their family could do one way and
No,
then
I
take the
beg
bus
to
the other
differ.
way. So we're going to be talking about that
Yeah.
a little more.
I know you're looking at ways to, get these costs in line with smaller vehicles, et cetera, but I'm wondering if a real quick adjustment could be made by, if we have businesses here that have taxi services to some of these, excuse me, remote areas where we're subsidizing per passenger $24 or so. Could we give them a voucher somehow and address that real quickly and save money there? Is that possible?
Amber, you want to speak to that?
Well, there's definitely some models that other counties have used to taxi voucher programs, and you can apply for funding through the Federal Transit Administration. So that's definitely an option that we haven't really explored in Calaveras County yet, just because I don't know the abundance of taxi cab companies here. I'm only aware of a couple, so I'm not sure we really haven't explored that.
We did write a grant, though, for a mobility manager, and I think within that we looked at alternatives to transit, and we looked at trip trans programs, we looked at volunteer driver programs, but I think a taxi voucher program could be considered as well.
Well, me being a rocket scientist, I can, add this up real quick. And if a taxi gets 3 people in the car and they have an appointed time that they go, then your trip, you pay the taxi less than $75. You actually
Getting those 3 people, that's the trick, yeah. That would work.
Yeah.
To 180.
Just a thought.
Agree.
Deborah, can I, or the council comment? One of the things I was trying to figure out, because I know they've changed the routes between the fiscal years, so sometimes it's hard to do an apples-to-apples comparison when routes themselves have changed. And it was mentioned that the midday route was taken away from Copper and from the McCallany Mountain Ranch routes, for example. Could we add to, on page 4 and page 5, the total number of vehicle service hours so that you could tell actually how much time buses were actually running those routes as well? Because I would think that in fiscal year 13-14, it's probably at least 1/3 more if we took out a midday route, just to get another sense of what's changing from 2 different fiscal years.
Total vehicle service hours per route?
Right. And then in the table 1, also the overall total, so we could see, are we providing more vehicle service hours in that quarter or less?
As far as, we're going to be able to provide more data per route because Paratransit Services is starting to keep more detailed data on how many passengers for each segment. So we'll be able to do that.
I wonder if going forward, too, Deborah, if there's a way we could get the cost of the maintenance of the vehicles stated on, it could be like, doesn't have to be per route, it could be everything. And the reason why I'm not letting this go, I guess, is I've been looking at not just this part of our government, but we have lots of vehicles that then their maintenance may be going out of the county, and ways to maybe keep all that work here that puts our residents to work. And so that's kind of what, I mean, this is one component of many things. I mean, we have a business that has garbage trucks on the road and CCWD trucks, and if there's some way to get everybody, a big happy family that gets together, and that's what
We have a challenge just getting the county departments together, so I can't imagine getting all the different agencies, yeah.
Yeah. But if that could be put in one of these reports going forward,
We
that'd
can
be
put
super.
maintenance costs in.
Yeah, that'd be super, thank you.
Okay, I think I have item B, Deborah.
Okay.
Just don't go far because you have
I'm
one
going
there.
to think.
All right.
So staff, with the support of the Public Works Department, recommends the council direct the executive director to modify the scope of work to increase our contract with Innovative Paradigm from $5,000 to a not to exceed of $20,000. If the Council of Governments remembers, this was a short-term solution to try to address transit costs that was directed and approved by this council as a result of the organizational and maintenance analysis report that was completed and the concerns expressed about the existing contract and fixed costs. So with that, the initial contract has proven very successful for county staff. They are grateful and appreciative for the leadership that Innovative Paradigms has been able to provide, and they seek further support in the continued review, response of proposals and the ongoing negotiations with the contractor. So with that, I would request your approval of this amendment. Once we have your approval, we will execute the contract, and then we'll follow up with the allocation instructions in April.
Comment by council. Comment by public? What? Councilmember Cole?
No, I think the consultant is doing a great job, and we're grateful for having him, and if the county is looking for additional help, we ought to give it to them.
Okay. Do we have a motion to direct the executive director to modify the scope of work and increase the contract amount to not to exceed $20,000 for Innovative Paradigm?
I'll make the motion.
Councilmember Cole.
Second.
Councilmember Ponte, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 7-0.
Okay, and then the next item is about the bus stop lighting project. It's the Cal OES 1112 grant, and what this is going to be is little solar light fixtures at bus stops that don't have the shelters. The shelters have solar light panels in them. So we're putting together an RFP, and we'll be soliciting bids for the purchase and installation of these lights. And so that grant runs out the end of this month, so we're getting a one-year extension, but hope to have it completed by the summer.
Is that for all the shelters?
No, this is for the bus stops, just the isolated stops that just have a flag post, and they'll have a little light fixture at the top that just sets down a little beam on the passenger so the driver can see that there's somebody there.
Okay.
Did we address 14C?
Did you see?
14C, Deborah, is the Calaveras Transit update to the Board of Supervisors on the budget. And so I think, if I remember, that has been approved by the Board of Supervisors?
Correct.
Okay, so the budget for this current fiscal year was amended. I think one of the things that we've been discussing early on in terms of the organizational maintenance analysis was the separation of the capital and the operations budget. So the county has successfully implemented that as well. And in just a preliminary review of that, I was happy to see, just based on that budget, they are anticipating making fare box recovery based on conservative revenue projections and their budgeted expenditures. So that is really good to see, because the first adopted budget wasn't on target for making that fare box recovery ratio. So I just wanted to let the council know that that has been approved, and I think is positive movement forward for transit operations.
Anything further for the transit report? Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Next item is the city report. We have a representative of the City of Angels.
Well, good evening. I'm Dave Myers with the City of Angels Camp. I think I have very little to tell you tonight. I do know that Dave Hannum attended the Partnership Planning Grant. He attended by a conference call because he's at a conference. Wait a minute. Yeah, by conference call, and he is at a conference down in Newport Beach at this time. But he hasn't reported back to me on what was discussed. We jumped to the projects. You know, the Stanislaus Avenue sidewalk project's complete. The Main Street sidewalk project's almost complete. We're waiting on a handrail to be installed. The Murphy's Grade Road project is starting. We got a couple of maps done that'll help us start the environmental, and had our RFP out for surveying. We'll make a selection soon. But other than that, it's just not much to report, really. Are there any questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Myers.
Thank you.
Caltrans report. Mr. Gedney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Gedney, Caltrans District 10. Just follow up on Dave's comment. Yes, there was a partnership planning grant meeting held to continue this process for the 449 circulation improvements. Dave Hannum was out but attended by a teleconference, and I didn't participate, but we had several staff members from Caltrans there. Carl was there representing the planning, and we had Vu Nguyen from our operations staff. Melissa, I think you were there as well, so I'll defer to you to mention it. But I just wanted to let you know that we're continuing with that process, and I think the city, Dave's very happy about the progress that we're making on this. We're unearthing a lot of old data going back many, many years on the old Foundry Lane issue. So anyway, I'll defer to you, Melissa. And then also, I think we had a very good, productive meeting on the city wayfinding plan. That was attended by our engineer representing our sign science staff. We had Amy Augustine, who's the consultant for the City of Angels, and we agreed to kind of help them shepherd through the entire package of sign proposals they have. They have a series of gateway monuments that are being proposed, as well as some new wayfinding signs within the city. So we're going to kind of work with them to understand there are some real stringent criteria that our sign engineers operate under, and it's the California Manual of Unified Control Traffic Devices. If it's not in the plan, it's very difficult to get it approved, but we're at least trying to see how flexible we could be with what is approvable. But anyway, we're gonna work with Amy and have the entire package sent through for our functional unit review, and hopefully get that what we can get approved for that. And then just finally, I'd just like to note that some interesting statistics were published recently, and Kate, some optimistic stuff for you. The United States Bureau, the Department of Transportation has a website. You can go to it. It's www.rita.dot.gov, and it publishes some statistics on the nation, and in particular, you can navigate to California-specific statistics. The reason I bring it up is I'm thrilled that we're moving forward with a self-help effort. I think there's other counties that are also looking for that too, and I've been a doom and gloomer about the revenue situation in the state for a long time, and I don't think that's going away, obviously. The state has in the governor's budget, there is a proposal to look at a road user tax, and the plan is going to be developed sort of on the model that Oregon had devised and had piloted, and we're going to work off of that, and I think it's estimated to be completed sometime around 2017. So it's many years off, so it's good to start thinking about how to generate new revenue locally and have your own control over that revenue. But the reason I bring that up is, as well as that we do have some interesting statistics that is on that website I mentioned. California is leading the way, as always, in alternative fuel use. Alternative fuel vehicles on the road from 2003 to 2012 have tripled. The amount of petroleum being used by California versus the rest of the United States is less. Commuters in California, there's fewer drive-alone vehicles in California, more carpoolers, more walkers, more bicyclists, more telecommuters. So we're leading the way in that regard. But unfortunately, the lane miles, the distressed lane miles, we're also leading the way in that. So the rest of the nation is kind of ahead of us on that game. They've gone to a fix-it-first mentality, led first by Pennsylvania, New Jersey, state of Washington, leading the way to try to invest their resources in the infrastructure that we have now. California was a little bit late coming to that table, but we're getting there. Now we realize that with limited resources, with more alternative fuel vehicles on the road, it's led to obviously a decline in gas tax revenues. That's our problem, and we didn't really anticipate that as well as we could have. So anyway, I applaud you for trying to resolve this, at least on a local level, with an initiative to become self-help. It has a lot of benefits, so I hope that you could pursue that and see if we can get something moving forward on that regard. So anyway, the website is www.rita.dot.gov. You have to find your way and navigate over to the California data. But there's some really interesting data. And one thing I do need to plug for California, and it's kind of, our engineers are very vested in our standards and our specifications. We're always talking about, we have to make sure that the facilities we construct are safe, and we have design immunity and all that stuff. But it has led to, according to the statistics, we lead the nation in reduced fatalities on the roadways. For every 100 million vehicle miles traveled, our statistic is 0.88 fatalities, so less than one person per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, versus the rest of the nation is over 1.13. So I think that's a credit to the work our engineers do to try to make our highways safe. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or address any concerns you may have.
Just one comment going back to your description of your wayfinding meeting, the City of Angels. You used the word flexibility. I would encourage you to keep that in mind, open-mindedness, put the manual aside. And be solution-minded as you do that.
Yes, yes, sir. We do have, as I've mentioned before, we have a new mission vision. We want to address the economics and livability of California. We're not just about moving people. We know we need to get there. So we put our policy out there, and we're trying to reach that goal. It's going to, I think everyone recognizes we're kind of a giant cruise ship. Hopefully we're more like the Queen Mary than the Titanic. But we move very slowly, but we're trying to get there.
Takes a big circle to turn a ship around.
Exactly. Yes, we're trying to get there though.
Well, John, I just want to thank you for that meeting on the city's wayfinding plan. I think that the city has done a great job with planning over the years, and that being one of the planning documents that they've had on the shelf, I think, since 2011. And the gap between that plan and implementation, I think, is the coordination with Caltrans. So I just want to thank John and Carl for coordinating that and being the support to city staff and seeing this through implementation. So thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Try to do what we can. We just
Yep.
keep communicating is what we can try to do
I
here.
think so.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Staff reports. Who would you like me to start with?
All right, so I just wanted to let the council know that the draft active transportation guidelines are out, and they anticipate the call for projects to be released in March of 2006. For the city and county that participated in this call for projects last year, it's probably the most extensive grant application I think we've written. And now all new projects are going to require a project study report or a PSR, and the application is so in-depth that it qualifies as such. So I just wanted to let staff be aware that those will be coming out on March 26th. We can continue to move forward and request funding for last year's projects. We have the applications complete if that's the direction of the local agencies. I know that the county would be seeking funding for construction of their project, which we have programmed potentially for environmental and design with local funds. Also, I wanted to just reiterate that we plan to be coming back to the Board of Supervisors on April 28th. As mentioned, that's going to require a scope of work amendment and a contract amendment with Cliff Chambers, mobility managers for the short-range transit plan. We plan to bring that back to the COG board in April, but this will allow us some time to have some discussion, hopefully with both the city and county, potentially a joint session on the transit system, the vision, the goals, objectives, identification of those performance measures, and then begin some discussion of how that prioritization is going to affect the service alternatives. After that, we plan on coming back to the Board of Supervisors and reviewing some of those service alternatives to see if we are able to implement their vision, so to speak. So those meetings will hopefully be coming up, but I just wanted to make you aware of that. And then obviously, thank you, Caltrans. The meeting today was, I think, a marathon meeting on the partnership planning grant, 4 hours regarding the 449 corridor study. And so we got a lot of great input from VU and Mike Hutchinson, who many of you know and I'm sure have worked with at some point. So I just feel very supportive, I think, or supported by the district in this new mission and vision. I think that they're providing a lot of advocacy and support to us at a local level. Whether or not we can break through those guidelines and those procedures is yet to be seen, but I think we definitely have the support of staff in hoping to achieve those goals. So we'll keep working on it. We'll keep working on it. And that's all I have to add.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Melissa Reggio. Legal counsel Jim Jones. Transportation planner Amber Collins.
I have nothing additional to report.
Carly.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Council reports. Councilmember Heminger.
I have nothing to report, thank you.
Councilmember Ponte.
I have a couple of things. I just want to reiterate what Melissa was talking about at last meeting after hearing the presentation. I had asked for a task force of sorts to kind of go through the report and kind of break it down and see where we are. So I'm supportive of this strategic plan that's been in place and the need to get it done, and I think this is a great opportunity to have a joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors and the City of Angels to really take a look at where we're going and where we want to go with transit. I think there's a lot of newness to our boards, and this will be a nice educational opportunity to kind of have a short historical review of transit and, you know, kind of dive into this report that was presented here from county staff as to where we are and what changes are being made and where we want to go in the future. I find so many times because of changes, whether they're internal changes with staff or departments or whatever there might be, that sometimes the ball drops and it takes a while to pick up the ball and move forward again. And having a strategic plan in place should be that roadmap for us to follow, so that if somebody does fall off the wagon, you might say, you know, we know that we can go forward because we have a plan in place. And to be somewhat fluid and very creative in how we want to provide transit for Calaveras County. I think tonight's report is a good example of that, is, you know, when you cut a route or when you know, change a location or whatever, how disruptive that can be, and for the system to get up to speed again as to what we're doing. And I oftentimes find that there's so much emphasis on a fare box recovery ratio that I don't think that is the true statistic we should be using to evaluate our transit system. And there might be some other opportunities. So I'm hopeful with a joint meeting, and I'm even going to recommend that the Board of Supervisors meets in the City of Angels, so that we can have a good open dialogue with our respective council and Board of Supervisors, and be able to work with this consultant and moving forward in a strategic plan. So certainly support Melissa's ideas there, along with Amber and Robert and such, and moving forward with that. So I'm going to hold off on that whole task force and pushing that until we have this particular meeting, and maybe out of that a task force gets developed. The second item is last meeting I was a bit disappointed in that we couldn't appoint a public member. I find it's important that we do continue to pursue that. I know it's very expensive when we recruit and put in a public notice in the paper. So I would ask that perhaps on our website that we can make that more obvious that we're looking for a public member. I know Kate is not going to be as active as she's had in the past, and I would hate for this board to be a 6-0 board and we have some ties and don't have that tiebreaker. And I think it's important as well as to fulfill that commitment of a public member. So I would challenge each of us as board members to bring back try to find somebody and encourage them to apply. So if we all took a personal commitment of trying to get one member of the public out there to apply to this particular board, I think that would be helpful, as well as saving the cost of overall recruitment, so we can have a nice panel to choose from and be able to select a member. The third item, I've sat on the COG board now for 2 years, and I have always found it odd at our meeting time, meeting at 6:30 at night. And when I look out and see general public, I see maybe 1 or 2 general public, and I see up to 12, 15 staff members. And I know that staff, for the most part, is being paid overtime or maybe comp time or whatever it might be. I'm looking at asking for this board to consider moving our meeting time up to maybe a 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. start time. This might allow for folks to ride transit to join us, since we don't operate at night. As I leave outside, it's pitch black. We have very poor lighting at this particular site, and the daytime hours might be a little bit more inviting. And many times we've had some meetings that go up to 9, 10 o'clock at night, and by then, I don't know, I'm kind of brain dead and I just want to get out of here, and I don't probably maybe, listen or hear as well. So I'd like to give some consideration to that, and probably one of the things that's more personal is the comfort of this room. Many times I find it very hot or very cold because of how our system operates during the day. But more importantly, it's really trying to take a look at, the safety of the environment, and taking a look at, trying to reduce some of our costs with the staff that is attending and participating after hours. So I don't know how that can be structured, if the majority of the folks like to consider that, or is just a kind of a cuckoo idea. But I bring it out there for some thought, and perhaps agendize for our next meeting. And that's all I have.
Councilmember Carney.
What she said.
All right.
No, thank you. Thanks for working with me in my first meeting. I've really gotten spoiled with these iPads, so shuffling these papers, I was probably driving Debbie crazy here. But I appreciate the first meeting, getting on board a little bit, and I'll look forward to the next one. Thank you.
Councilmember Morris.
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Cohen.
Well, just a couple of comments. I would certainly echo Debbie's suggestion of some sort of a joint city-county session for strategic planning purposes. We, on the city council, also have new members. Even speaking for myself, now this is starting my third year on the COG. All of this material that we're going through seems so much more digestible now than it did 2 years ago, because this is complicated stuff, and I think, especially when it comes to dealing with our transit crisis issues, I think a dialogue with both city and county together would be very helpful and meaningful. And I certainly am open and receptive to any kind of alternate meeting times. I think that would be great as well. The last thing I would mention is just to add one more comment to the partnership planning grant. The 17th, a week, let's see, I guess it is a week from Tuesday, or next Tuesday, excuse me, no. It's the 17th. We're going to have another meeting of the Community Advisory Committee. Hopefully, maybe you guys can share, will we have the existing conditions report presented at that time by our consultant?
Yeah, we should be able to get that out to the advisory committee, and we can post it on the website for the project, planningangelscamp.com, and we can get that out next week. I think she was waiting for comments from the city and the project team on any additional changes to the report, but I'll make sure that gets out next week.
Okay, good. That would be helpful.
We also plan to have the alternatives to no later than the 12th, I believe, to take a look at the alternatives.
That's my only
And
comment.
the results from the surveys, the community surveys will also be posted on the
Right,
website.
I've seen
for
those
people.
on the website.
Councilmember Allen.
Oh, I just wanted to say an additional thank you to Public Works for pushing that bus shelter project through. There was a time where I was worried that it might be lost, and it just feels really good to see something, be built. It's just so satisfying. And also thank you to the COG staff for working so hard and advocating for our city and county. And I'm really excited looking at the projects that we prioritize for the COLT projects and having those come to fruition in the future. And I guess you're a COG nerd when you get really excited about sidewalks, but I'm really excited about the idea of new sidewalks. So I'm looking forward to see what this board is able to accomplish in the coming months and years, and thank you very much.
I want to thank the council for appointing me the chair last month. I had the pleasure of attending for my first executive management group meeting, as well as the TAC meeting as an observer. And also I want to thank you for the opportunity to go to the California Council of Governments seminar coming up. I'm in this for my kids. I think that the decisions that we make are long-term decisions that are going to have long-term applications, and if we can make wise decisions to use the resources we have at our disposal to benefit transit in this county, our families and our children, and then beyond will be benefited by that. And so that's the perspective I'm trying to bring to this. This is not a short-term viewpoint when we're looking at the things that we are trying to accomplish here. I'm very pleased to see the collaborative efforts that Melissa is able to create between the different agencies and the different types of groups. And I'm just looking forward to I think, a very productive and interesting year of 2015. So, thank you. I believe we have one last item here. We have a minute order appointing the labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, the unrepresented employee Melissa Eads, as an action item. And this is to appoint the labor negotiator to review and discuss with Melissa her salary.
So if I may, I'd like to turn this item over to Jim Jones, who will be presenting.
The item anticipates that at some future meeting, you'll be having a closed session discussion to do a performance review and of the executive director, and that we want to designate one or two of your board members to sit down with you and discuss the terms of compensation. You're not required to do it that way, but that's what's been done in the past. The requirement for the closed session states that before you can have a closed session, you have to open a public session in which to identify your designated representative. So this is the time for you, if you wish, to decide who will, at that future time, sit down with us and discuss your compensation. I think last year was the board chair, board chair and vice chair possibly.
Was it two people last year?
I think just the chair.
Okay.
Chair?
Yes. From there, the recommendation went to the Executive Management Committee, and then from the Executive Management Committee to the full board.
Discussion by council.
So just so I know what you're asking for a member to be appointed, to negotiate, and also give a performance review?
No.
Just negotiate the
Just
salary?
be the person who will handle the negotiation. If you decide later on to do it that way, you can change course. But this satisfies the requirement that you publicly name the designated person. Last year, it took over 2 months to get this done because you had to designate the representative and then come back a month later to actually have the discussion and instruct the negotiator. So this will hopefully reduce it to one, being done at one meeting.
And are we actually appointing that person now,
Yeah.
tonight? Okay.
Thank you. I mean, I would assume it would be the chair.
Yeah, I would nominate the chair. I would also nominate Wes. It might be nice to have 2 people. I don't know if that makes it more complicated or not, but is it always usually done by one?
I don't think we have a long history of how this has been done.
Okay.
No.
Councilmember Heminger.
I think I support Kate's proposal. Having 2 people just seems to me more workable and opportunity to share thoughts. And I think Wes and John are excellent choices.
Just a question, another question on procedures. Once that negotiator or group is identified, would they then meet in closed session with the council to get some parameters of negotiation?
Yes, that's the closed session.
That would be done prior to meeting with Melissa?
That's correct. And you recall from last year, some of you anyway, that the final action on salary has to be taken in a public session.
Right.
Do you need a move, somebody to move?
We do need a motion to appoint one or more of the council members to be the labor negotiators for our executive director.
Well, I move we appoint the chair, John Gomes, as the labor negotiator that, in this instance, to negotiate Melissa's
compensation.
That's about as wordy as it can get.
But it was clear.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion to appoint the chair. Is there any further discussion by the council?
I would just encourage maybe a second person.
Is there a motion to amend appointing the chair to include a second person?
Wait, let me withdraw my motion then and start over.
Okay.
Do we need, was there a second? You seconded it.
I'll
So
withdraw
actually,
the
you didn't
second.
withdraw yours first, but, okay, so let me start over.
Okay.
I move that we appoint the chair, or in his absence, the vice chair, to negotiate the labor contract with Melissa Eads.
Yes.
I think what Kate is asking for is 2 people.
I just did. the chair, or in his absence, the vice chair. You mean two at one time? Oh.
Elaine's the vice chair.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I'm sorry.
Do we have a second to this new motion of appointing the chair and in his absence, the vice chair to negotiate? I'm not hearing a second.
No, that fails.
Do we have a new motion?
Want me to make the motion for both? I mean, I don't know. Well, I move that we have two people, the chair and the vice chair, negotiate the labor agreement with Melissa.
Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Motion's made by Councilmember Kearney, seconded by Councilmember Cone to have the chair and vice chair as the labor negotiators with Melissa Eads. Any further discussion? Is there, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. And with that, in much faster time than last meeting, it's good to note that it's only 8:25. We are concluding the March 4th COG meeting, and the next scheduled meeting will be on April 1st at 6:30 in this chamber. Thank you.
April Fools.